This is an episode of a technical version of the family business where I'm thrilled to introduce you to Alex Ballatori, the CEO and co-founder of Stroke DX. Alex, I've been looking forward to getting you on here. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you. Yeah, this was one of those people, when I start talking to some folks, I jot down TFB, the family business, when I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm like, this is something that people are going to resonate with because you just have this way of describing your company and your technology and your life story in a way it's humble, and yet you're proud of it. And I don't know, I love people that are proud of their family and where they're from and what their parents did and everything else. So I'm looking forward to sharing all this. Can you take the first minute and give a quick snapshot? Okay, this is what Stroke DX is. And this is the goal and the technology. Then we can expand on it, obviously, to learn more about it. But I want to give people some context and frame of reference of what it is that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely happy to. So we have a novel technology that enables us to create portable neuroimaging products for the purposes of stroke. So we are a tech transfer actually out of Caltech. We're still a relatively new company, but moving quite quick. And we utilize this technology in two different form factors to solve problems across the entire stroke continuum. So one of which is a handheld product that we deploy in the EMS for the purposes of the current problem where a lot of stroke patients end up going to the wrong hospital because we have no way of understanding what's actually happening in their brain. And then once they make it to the right hospital, there's really no great way of getting any form of portable imaging at the point of care. So we have developed an automated system for that issue on its own. So it provides objective information right at the point of care, right at the patient's bed, so you don't have to move them down to radiology.
That's extraordinary. And so what kind of training goes into it for the EMS folks? Like how hard is this for someone to pick up?
It's quite easy, it's quite lightweight, and all you have to do is move it around the patient's head in a set position. And at the moment, so I'll take a step back. When we first built out this technology, it was handheld, and we would move it by hand around the patient's head. We wear a cap. We would follow the tracks around the patient's head. Take us a couple minutes, and then we would output that information right onto a tablet, which would show you where the stroke was and what type it was.
That's extraordinary. And so you said it used to be handheld, now it's something else?
So initially it was handheld, and then after we surveyed the stroke market, which we kind of view it as there's two problems, right? There's the kind of the early pre-hospital stroke issue, which is again not getting one out of six patients actually goes to the wrong hospital via EMS. So rapid rule in and accelerating care and getting them to the right hospital is kind of problem number one that you bundle, which is what our handheld form factor will solve. And then problem number two is then once a patient's admitted to the hospital, you need objective information because the disease changes very quickly once they're even in their room. So we have built an automated system that sits right at the head of the bed. The patient lays into it and it can get objective information about the patient's head in just a couple of minutes versus the current standard of care is we just inherently rely on subjective neurochecks every 30 minutes to an hour. And then we send patients on average 4 times back to CT. And about 80 to 90% of these repeat CT scans show that nothing had changed at all. But as a clinician, you need information about this patient's brain. So with our technology, you don't have to bring them down to radiology every single time. And you'll have more information at the point of care by just placing our device right at the head of the bed and getting that information you need right at the point of care.
What's the specific designation that the hospital should be shooting for as far as being able to treat every kind of stroke?
I'm sorry, one more time.
So the designation, the level of care at the hospital, is it a, because I know in trauma centers there's certain levels of the way it is. Is it just certain hospitals have a stroke program that you're able to attend to, or is there certain levels of stroke attention that hospitals have so the EMT knows where to go?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of stroke they're having. If you need to go to a primary stroke center where they have a neurosurgical team that can provide the best intervention, but oftentimes EMS, oftentimes these stroke patients are just found down. You don't know whether it's a stroke or it's
Okay.
cardiac related or what. So they take the patients to the closest center because that's just where they're routed to. But they need to be at a stroke center that has the suites necessary and the clinicians available to take care of them.
So it's an amazing story how this all happened. You have a unique background, and so your family is from Italy, yeah? I would imagine
Yes.
from
Yep.
pretty obvious. Uh, so tell that story. Your parents came over to the U.S. and I think that most people find that compelling. Give me, if you wouldn't mind, a minute or two on how that all transpired.
Yeah, so they came to the States when they were both quite young, so they're very American in many ways. However, my upbringing was kind of like, have you seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Yes,
It's kind of like my that was my family, and
with the
they both
Windex.
were with the Windex.
Yeah.
Yep, with the Windex and the food, and not understanding if someone were to bring someone to our house as vegetarian, they're like, oh, we'll just make you lamb, you'll be all right. Um, but my dad was pursuing his PhD at the University of Rochester, and my mom was pursuing her MD. And they met at a dinner actually, where they both saw each other's name tags and they're like, "Oh, that's an Italian last name. That's an Italian last name." And then the rest is history. They stayed in Rochester forever. My dad ended up becoming the chair of environmental medicine at the University of Rochester, and was a pioneer in understanding how the human body absorbs fats from the intestine to the liver, which led to a lot of pharmaceutical targets. And then my mom ended up becoming an orthopedic hand surgeon, and is also an innovator running a company right now,
Wow.
that they're implanting their new FDA cleared device in patients for basal joint arthritis right now as we speak. So med tech and innovation it was kind of dinner table conversation when I was growing up. And so I owe a lot to my parents. They came from farming backgrounds in Italy, and they came to the States with very little financial support, and they made it to my mom's a world renowned hand surgeon, and my dad was again a pioneer in understanding how our bodies metabolize fats. So I owe a lot to them. They raised my sisters and I. Essentially, we had everything we could ever need, but they raised us kind of with this mentality of you earn what you want, right? And it was as a kid it's tough, right? When your parent you live in America, and you're with other your peers with parents that they have the Xboxes and they have the games and they go to restaurants all the time. Versus I can count on one hand how many times my family went out to a restaurant when we were growing up, you know. Um, but yeah, they definitely are. I owe everything to them.
It's interesting because most people, I shouldn't say most people, but there are some people who complain about having to wear name tags. It's a pain in the rear. They don't want to put it on. But look what happened.
Yeah,
Because your parents had name tags, this whole thing has happened. If there were no name tags, they probably would have never met. And
right.
I mean, that's a fascinating ripple that happened. And so, yeah, what's it like sitting down? Because my mom doesn't do anything like I do, and her career was in retail, and she was great at what she did, but she certainly really still doesn't even understand what I do after 21 years. But you could sit down with your mom and you could talk shop, and
Oh,
I mean
all
that
the
must
time.
be amazing.
Yeah, no, it is. So when I was, whether it's nature or nurture, right? Having both parents with scientific minds, um, science and medicine it just was naturally, I was naturally drawn to it. And so I ultimately knew that I wanted to pursue a career in science and medicine. And I also knew I wanted to be in med tech. But I didn't know what the right path was for me. So I studied biology and chemistry at the University of Rochester. I didn't leave home for a few reasons. Unfortunately, my father passed when I was 16, and so I needed to stay close to home for the family. But I knew I wanted to go into some level of higher education for some graduate degree in science and medicine, and I knew I wanted to end up in med tech. I've known this forever. And so after I graduated U of R, I moved to San Francisco, and I took some time off, got my hands on as many startups that I could. I worked at UCSF for the orthopedic surgery department, and it opened up my eyes to the world of medtech. And I ultimately decided that the medical degree was a better fit for me because compared to the PhD, because it would enable me to see a wide breadth of all the problems in healthcare versus going down the PhD route and becoming a subject matter expert in a niche. And it was the best decision I ever made for a few reasons, which one of which is my first roommate in medical school is my current co-founder. We can get into that in a bit, but yeah, growing up with parents that I talk to my mom now about FDA and going to market and distributors and selling to clinicians, and their pricing strategy. It's just it's funny now too, because before it was very unidirectional. I was asking her a lot of questions, and now we're starting to come the other direction. She called me and she's like, "Hey, we're raising another round of funding, and I don't understand what this means. Have you seen this before?" And I had. Obviously, we've been doing our homework, and she's more on the medical side. She has an amazing CEO that's running her company, but it's definitely special. And my mom and I are kind of carbon copies of each other.
Yeah.
She's probably gonna listen to this. Thanks, mom. But yeah, no, it's really nice to have someone to talk to that that's that close to home.
Well, to me, I've always felt that you need someone who's willing to tell you your baby's ugly. And there isn't a mom on this planet who can't wait to tell you what mistakes you made or what you're doing wrong or why you should do it her way. And so it's perfect that you have someone who speaks your language. Now, did this rub off on your sisters at all, or are they not in medicine?
My oldest sister is in her last year of orthopedic surgery
Yeah.
residency at WashU in St. Louis, and she
Wow,
just
great school.
matched for orthopedic oncology at MGH. So she's moving there in June. And then my middle sister was the smart one and didn't go into medicine. And she's an entrepreneur. She runs a couple of companies herself and is based in New Hampshire. So now they're all trying to pitch their case to make me come out to the New England area, but SoCal is I'm here for good, so they're gonna have to pitch pretty hard.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue. Let's talk about pitch for a second. Everyone, you are looking at the MedTech Innovator Grand Prize winner. Him and his co-founder Shane I mean, there's 1,200 people who apply for that, correct?
For the early stage. Yep.
Yeah, and let's explore that a bit. So, how did you hear about it in the first place? Did someone convince you to sign in, or did you already know about it and you had your sights set on it ahead of time, or was it one of those things where someone said, "Hey, you really might want to look into this"?
Well, so we formed as a company in January of 2022, and as a tech transfer out of Caltech, we had a lot of support from the Office of Tech Transfer and Corporate Partnerships, and who are still very, very close with, and we owe a lot to, which I'd like to get into later. But thank you to them very, very much for helping us. They were the ones that actually introduced us to the MedTech Innovator and just accelerators in general. And so we actually applied for MedTech Innovator before we'd even formed as a company in 2022.
Wow.
Got rejected. Um, and it's interesting when you reapply, you can see your application from last year, and it was comical in some ways, but it was also validating in other ways to see how much we've honed our focus over the course of 2022. So we heard about it from Caltech. We saw the program throughout 2022. We saw the value of it, all the companies that were in it, and we wanted to be a part of it. So we reapplied this past year, and we're ecstatic when we found out that we even just were able to come to the roadshow. And so we went to UCLA. We pitched at their roadshow event, and we met, I think it was like 37 or 38 judges over the course of a 3-hour session where we would pitch for about 20 minutes to groups of 8 at a time. And just the value from that alone, I was happy. I was like, Shane, if we don't make it through this, we just gained so much experience and opened our networks an incredible amount just from the roadshow, which only about 250 of the companies get invited to that. And then when we found out we made it to the cohort, obviously we're incredibly excited, but we still didn't fully understand how valuable this program was. We saw that it was very valuable, but to look back now to where we are today, and how many doors that were sealed shut that I could never possibly think of being open at this stage of our company that are now wide open, it's really remarkable. So then we had the first kickoff event, which is up in San Francisco, the Innovator Summit, which culminates in, after you meet all of the cohort for a few days, the cohort gets to vote on the top 5 companies based on who you met and how you feel about their company, with the criteria being, would you invest in them and would you want to work with them? And we made it to the top 5. Again, surprised and very excited and very humbled. And we pitched kind of a similar format to what we did at AdvaMed. We had a 7-minute slot, and we gave our pitch, and we ended up winning the Vision Award at Wilson Sonsini. We're like, okay, wow, like we are really starting to make a name for ourselves here. This is we gotta make as much, we gotta get as much out of this as we can. And so then after that, they start to pair you with mentors. So they paired us with a few, which were incredibly helpful. But I was like, Shane, we are only in this program for a couple months, and let's get as many mentors as they'll give us. So we actually asked for more, and it was the best decision we ever made. I think it's safe to say that they sped up our process by about a year. We are so much more focused, and our value proposition so much clearer. The individuals that we've met, from with respect to investors, strategics, manufacturers, value analysis committees, it was just nonstop. Every week we were learning something new, and it was just taking some ideas that we had and just forming them into into solid paths for us. And then obviously ultimately getting selected to present at AdvaMed was huge for us, and ultimately winning. So I can't. We could talk for hours about MedTech Innovator and how great it's been for us, and what Paul, Catherine, and Diane and their whole team does for startups. But really, I was talking to Shane about this the other day. I look forward to the day for someone to take a crack at quantifying the impact of MedTech Innovator on human health in general. They speed up companies there is no other accelerator that does what they do. So I'm eternally grateful to them. And I think honestly, the biggest value of the program for me now, after leaving the program, outside of the visibility and the validation and giving us that platform, is really the CEO network, the network of people that I have monthly calls with 4 people that I met at MTI, and only one of them was in my cohort. The rest are alumni that have been through similar challenges and are repeat successful CEOs that sometimes we just have the hour call and have coffee, catch up about life. But sometimes we make breakthroughs on these calls for each other. So that program, I can't speak highly enough, and I wish we had a lot more time to talk about it, but happy to answer any questions you have about it as well.
Well, look, I'm fortunate enough to know Paul a bit and have been blown away by it. I know, did you meet CL? She had one.
Yes.
Yeah. And she may be the most direct communicator that I've spoken with in a long time. There is no mincing of any words. And I bump into her at every conference, and I always try to sit with her because I just something about her is out of the ordinary, and her technology is amazing. And it's funny. People probably think on the outside looking in, hey, it's the money you get a lot of money when you win the prize, but that's only a portion of what comes out of this, because the money, frankly, goes pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you already had it earmarked and spent. But the relationships and the doors it opens, and the investors that now are willing to listen to you and have a meeting, even if they don't give you the money, at least they're willing to talk to you. All right, so I'll ask you a hard personal question. You don't have to say if you don't want to, but how'd y'all celebrate when you won? You and Shane, were you just dumbfounded and didn't know what to do afterwards? Or did you already have a plan that, hey, if we win, we're going here and we're buying drinks for everybody?
We took our team out for dinner, and Shane and I are very, very, how do I say this? We grew up with immigrant parents, right? And I think that translates into how we spend money as a company.
Yep.
We have been insanely lean, and we don't really. It was. We went out for dinner. We spent a couple $100s, and it was. We all were like, I don't know. This is kind of off brand for us, but we did celebrate. We definitely celebrated. We did not anticipate winning. We were, the other 5 companies, the other 4 companies that were up there were all incredible. So we were shocked, and obviously incredibly excited when they said our name on stage.
All right. So and I know you wouldn't do this, but let's just use this as a qualifier, without saying anything negative about any other company. What do you think was a separator? Why do you think you won?
I mean, there's nothing negative to say about any of the other companies. They're all incredible. I think, stroke is such a devastating disease that everyone's been impacted by it. And if you've ever been in the hospital with a stroke patient and see these huge gaps in care, and delays, and also just knowing that, the saying, time is brain, right? Every minute you lose over 1 million neurons irreversibly, right? And our technology and our space people have been trying to solve this for decades. And we, despite surgical advancements and therapeutic advancements, we're really not putting a dent in the outcomes. as much as we should be. And so the portable stroke diagnostic space and improving the efficiency of care and providing objective information, whether it be in an ambulance or in the neurocritical care units or in the neuro rehab units, is really what's going to make a difference, because we're all talking about time here. And right now, the paradigm is it's just so inefficient. And that's why we're actually pursuing with this new automated system, which we're pushing to market first and planning to launch in 2025 commercially, is going to address a major gap in collecting objective information right at the point of care quickly, and in a non-radiating fashion.
So where are you now on your clinical timeline? Where does the product sit?
So at the moment, we're testing it right now with our current design, and we are learning quite a bit with respect to the human factors in the clinical environment. We're going to be entering our design freeze, approach our design freeze in the next few months. We'll be submitting to the FDA by the end of this year, and then again launching commercially in 25 with our automated system, I should say. And in parallel, we're developing our handheld unit for the EMS. But right now, at the moment, our biggest efforts are pushing the automated system into neurocritical care units.
It's amazing to me that it's fast and slow all at the same time. You know, it's slow, so and all of a sudden, boom,
Yep.
here we are, and you have to start
Yep.
thinking ahead. Because that's funny. I was an accounting major for like a semester, and one of the things that I remember, well, the only thing I remember, quite honestly, is that the concept of a going concern. You have to build your company with the expectations that you're going to be around for a long time. That's the way you have to
Hmm.
make decisions. And so you're having to build this out with the knowledge, okay, this is launching next year. So here's all the things we need to do to get ready for that launch, even though it's a solid 12 months away before you're going to be commercialized. And there's so much to do. It's really been amazing. So you started to mention a bit about Shane, and I think that there's something in the cosmos, and I'm not a very religious guy, but just think about that. With all the people that go to school and all the people in your college that you were at, your roommate is this guy. And his family are a bunch of immigrants like yours. And like so talk a bit about that. Like, how did this idea come together when you all were just sitting around a table with a pitcher of beer somewhere?
Well, all of I mean, I owe everything to Shane. He is a brilliant human being, and he's also one of the kindest people you'll ever meet, and humble. And when I walked into the door, I had just come back from traveling before starting school, and we met, and we instantly hit it off just because of my experience up at UCSF, my interest in spine and in orthopedics, his interest in spine and neurosurgery. And we started just talking about research in general, where we our interests in med tech, and how we get very frustrated with a lot of these amazing ideas that sit on bench tops at amazing universities and get stuck and never actually help patients. And so that's one thing that Shane and I share. And so as I got to know him, and he was pursuing through his PhD, he was always very interested in the brain, and he was also very interested in novel sensors. And in at Caltech, there's a lot of interdisciplinary work. And so Shane, going into his PhD, was set out on identifying sensors that could be applicable to the brain. And interestingly enough, not interestingly enough, he was looking in the aerospace industry and looking at the sensors that they used, and identified these sensors that they used to detect cracks in airplane wings. It's called non-destructive testing. So they would move the sensor across, kind of like a metal detector, and look for cracks in the wing before flying it. And so he saw them, and the light bulb hit immediately. And so he's like, I'm going to tune this to the human body, because the human body has, in many respects, each tissue has its own separate conductivity, similar to how copper and iron have different conductivities. And so he tuned these sensors to the conductivity of the human body, and started that's really what took everything off. With the information they got in the early stages of his PhD, they got an R01 from the NIH, which enabled him to do cadaveric testing and human testing, and ultimately demonstrating that these sensors can differentiate between ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke, as well as localize right at the point of care, and with a very small, very affordable product. And so that's really, he and I were working together on other projects, and we actually running a separate business um, together. And he showed me this data, and he's like, "We have something here." And there is no other person that I want to run this company with, and let's do it together. And so for me, it was a little bit not kind of where I envisioned my life was going to go immediately, but stroke hits home for me. I've lost several family members to stroke, and I had done my neurocritical care rotations, neurology rotations, and saw how inefficient the care was, especially with just the continuously sending patients back down to CT when we know that everyone on the team is like, there's probably nothing that changed, but we have absolutely no way of knowing. So we're going to send them down anyways. And like 30 to 40% of all serious adverse events in stroke care happen during that transport time, and 80 to 90% of the time that transport was unnecessary. So he and I took a seat, and we're like, okay, we know what we have, we know what this tech can do, and we know the two different spaces in stroke care. Which ones do we want to go for first, right? And how do we want to do it? What does the form factor look like? And so we sat down and started to analyze the kind of the economics of both. And fortunately for us, many individuals over the past decade and many companies have attempted to solve this problem. And so we were able to learn a lot from them through their successes and through mostly failures. And so we sat down and planned out our business model, and we were like, all right, we're still full-time med students, but we'll raise some money, right? So we were both full-time students. We were in the hospital for, probably not allowed to say how many hours a week. And during our lunch breaks or during afternoons, or any VCs that'd be willing to meet on the weekends, we were sitting on sidewalks with God knows what on our scrubs and pitching to VCs and saying, look, this is what we have. It's going to be a game changer, and this is a golden egg technology. It was difficult. It was very, very difficult. We never got any no's. Everyone wanted to say not now, because we were translating a technology into something that, we showed them our prototype, which had quite a bit of duct tape on it. And we said, we're going to automate this thing. We're going to put it in a machine that's robotic, and the data is going to be so much better. And everyone's like, that's a really cool idea, but we're not going to invest in that just yet. But come back to us when you have that, though. And so we kept fighting, and probably after the 400th no, we found our lead that believed in us. And we're eternally grateful to Free Flow Ventures and Caltech for giving us this opportunity to prove what we could do. And we're extremely grateful to them, because I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if they never believed in us, and we wouldn't have built out this device and validated on benchtop, gone through all the work that we've done and won MedTech Innovator if they didn't give us this chance. So it was 2022 was quite a year. 2023 was, as soon as the money hit the bank in October of 2022, it was out with the same minute. Yep. We already knew exactly where we wanted. We were sprinting full steam ahead. So it's a fun year, but I think this coming year is going to be even more exciting.
Well, look, you've done the thing that all investors want, was you got all your ducks in a row. And so many times I hear about these great technologies, but the CEOs, the founders, they just can't articulate what it is, or they just can't tell the story in a way that's compelling. But mostly it's because they don't have their clinical data together. They don't have their reimbursement strategy together. They don't have it. Because I'll tell you this, the companies that do, they're oversubscribed. Like the investors line up when you have your act together. Yeah. And that's just the way that it is. And so when people say there's no money out there, I'm like, that's not true. There is money out there. They're just real selective about what they do, because they've got it. It's sitting in their bank account. And technically they kind of need to spend it, because when you have a fund, your whole point is investing with it. That's why you've built a fund. So it's going to happen. But I have seen some great investment and definitely some oversubscribed, and it's because that they were ready to bring this to that story and bring this to those people and let them hear about why this is fantastic and look at the result. Because I think success begets success. You have your moment, and then you get MedTech Innovator, and then you get investment, and then all these things keep happening. And it's not an accident. It's because you had small wins that started becoming big wins, and there you go. And so what happens when you and Shane disagree. Has that ever happened?
Hasn't happened yet.
No?
So, and we've been working together for 5 years now, and
Really?
this is our second business together. We are always on the same page. Yeah, we're very, very lucky.
That may be the most surprising
And
sentence of this entire conversation.
you know what? You know what? So people ask us this a lot, and Shane is so brilliant, and his brain goes so fast. And we kind of talk about, like, Shane is the guy that builds the artillery and just wants to go after it. I'm the guy that aims it, right?
Okay.
And it's been it's been very, very true, where he is just constantly has ideas and constantly is making advancements. And the two of us, we trust each other like no other. And when we say something, we always hear each other out. And we've never had a potential uh, a potential task that we need to accomplish that we couldn't figure out and start executing right away. We talk to each other all day, every day,
I bet.
even when we didn't live with each other. Um,
Yeah, it's really interesting when I step back from it because I speak to people who are accomplished every day. I mean, this is I have a luxury of what I do, which is I get to talk to some of the brightest all around the world, and
mhm,
it is the thing that I love most about what I do. But what I find the most fascinating are the people who can fit 25 hours into 24.
mhm,
And so I'm curious as we start to get to the end of this conversation is you have a significant amount of publications and presentations. You're a full-time med student. You're running a company. This is your second company. You have, I would hope, some kind of personal life that you're able to have things that you like to do. Like, what advice, I guess, would you give to somebody who's up and coming and has this great idea, but they're still in school and all this kind of thing? Like, how can you make this happen and still enjoy it?
mhm. Well, you need to have a good co-founder. It's plain and simple. You can't do this alone, and you need someone that, when times get tough, that you both believe in it so much that it doesn't matter how tough the time is. You'll get through it, right? And again, it all ties back to having a strong partner. Um, for me, it's we've been really, really lucky. Shane and I meeting was this is our first this is our second company together, and we'll probably hit double digits together by the end of our careers. We work so well together, and so again, if someone's up and coming, I think the thing is too is a lot of people think that they need to fit a certain mold to do something, and just don't listen to it. A lot of people doubt young people, but I think if anything, it gives us an edge. We have so much fire in our gut to do what we need to do, and to prove everyone what we believe is true. Um, so you have to take time for yourself. I think that's a big thing that Shane and I probably need to listen to our own advice and taking time for ourselves. And we do. We have our hobbies. We host dinners together all the time, and when I make wine, it's a
Do
family
you?
tradition, of course. And yeah, yeah, reinforcing the Italian, stereotypes. But we have plenty of things. And Shane and we go fishing together. We just bought a bunch of fishing gear. We after working for a crazy like number of days in a row, we're like, all right, we're gonna go to the beach, we're gonna catch some fish, we're gonna cook dinner together, and we're not gonna talk about work, which usually never
I was
happens.
gonna
But
say the odds of that is
we
probably
do we do take the time to check in on each other and with ourselves. But really, again, coming back to your question, you have to have a strong partner that you can go to, and whether it's you're celebrating in the good times or you're sitting in the war room during bad times, you have to have it, right? And you also need to have good mentors, right? Like we don't make a single decision unless we have we've been very lucky that our over half of our investors from our first round of funding are KOLs in the stroke space. And then when we would have a gap where we would say, okay, we need someone with regulatory support, we would go out and get it, so that as we were honing our regulatory plan, we had someone, right? And same thing for now. We're expanding and getting and preparing for commercialization. So we're bringing on individuals with multiple decades of experience that we block their time, and we make our plans, and then I present the plan to them, and I say, poke as many holes as you can, right? And then we go and execute. So mentors are everything. um, and you know what I would say too is, if depending on the stage, you have to apply to MedTech Innovator. If you're an early stage company, you have to. It was I can't. I still the value of the program is still. I still in the years to come, it will just continue to increase. So yeah, or if you, especially if we're talking here MedTech, you gotta participate in these accelerators because they bring everyone to your front door.
I would say there's something about youth that where you just instead of saying why, you just say why not? Why
Yeah,
can't we?
right.
Why do I have to do it that way? And when I look at I have teenage kids, and that's the way they ask questions. When I
Hmm.
say, well, this is the way we're doing it, they go, well, why wouldn't you do it this way? And I say,
Right.
because we don't. They go, why not? And I'm like, okay, I don't have an answer for that. And and I think there's something about having less experience that has some value in it because you're not bogged down by what you've seen or heard can't be done. Like I wrote something on
Right.
LinkedIn recently that got some traction, and it was about all these articles I read about how startups are failing. And all
Mm.
they talk about is negative. And I wrote this piece about, well, how come there aren't articles about how awesome some of them are doing and how they're making progress and the momentum is here and here's the roadway that they follow that you can use also. Like these are the ideas. Like, why don't they perpetuate and propagate the positive side of
Hmm.
startups? I realize the numbers are against startups being successful. I know that. I've been doing this long enough to know. But I never understood why there isn't this amplification of what's good about it.
Right.
And all the people like you who just leaned into it. And here's what could happen if you do it. I mean, that's what I would be pushing if I was in that part of the business is just sing this song as much as we can. Do you get
Yeah.
interviewed a lot? Do you get people coming to you? Do you get a chance to preach?
Yeah. No. After the MedTech Innovator win, we've had multiple interviews and podcasts, and obviously very gratefully overwhelming interest from investors and strategics. So we've now over the past couple of months have had a platform to share, and obviously very grateful to be here today too to share this. So you're you're solving the problem that you're seeing by what you're doing here. So
Yeah. I mean, I always want to contribute. I'm one of those wanted to be a doctor but got terrible grades kind of guy. And so this is how I contribute my 1% of the 1% to healthcare is I do this. And I can't operate anybody, but I sure as heck can talk. And so this
yeah.
is what I do. Well, look, you've been every bit as interesting as I thought you were going to be. I am not surprised at all at how well this conversation went. This has been a technical version of the family business where I've had on Alex Ballatori, the CEO of Stroke DX. Alex, thanks so much for being on. You've been phenomenal.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt.
Yep. Appreciate it. All the best.